Saban Series computer activated. Beginning Alpha Command Level briefing. For your eyes only. Historical overview. The Earth is dead. As the asteroid fragments landed, the last few survivors departed the solar system, seeking a new home among the stars. World after unsuitable world was rejected, their resources low, their situation desperate. A marginally suitable planet was found. They called the world New Terra. It was cold, dry, nearly airless, but they saw possibilities. In that spirit of optimism, they named their colony Eden. They came with the best of intentions, to build, grow, and thrive. And for a time, they did. Then conflict arose between the colonists, and a splinter colony, Plymouth, was founded. New Terra would be their home, but on what terms? Plymouth wished to live in harmony with the planet, adapting themselves to live in its harsh realm, no matter the cost. Eden planned to tame its new home, to conquer it and terraform it into a new Earth using advanced biotechnology. The two philosophies could not coexist. Talks grew heated as Plymouth learned Eden's secret intention to proceed with their plan. In protest, Plymouth destroyed the last satellite link, condemning them to silence. Only one planet, but two very different worlds. Which will you choose?
Greetings and welcome to an episode of Let's Do a Level of Outpost 2. A RTS published in 1997 by Sierra and developed by Dynamix. Not the game I expected after I played the original Outpost. Outpost 2 is more of a spin-off based on the Rebel Outpost event of the original Outpost. This game is a RTS with a focus on colony management, wrapped in a story written by J. Stephen York, following Eden and Plymouth colonies as disaster strikes and the fight for survival begins. And if you're coming from the Plymouth colony playthrough and thinking, hey, you said the exact same thing there. Well, that's because I had it written down. Right. Like I said, this game comes with a story. And as an experiment, I'm gonna be giving a I'm gonna be giving a reading of that story before each mission, because I think the story is an essential part of the Outpost 2 experience. Because keep in mind, this game is quite old and built with very limited resources as far as I can gather, and they didn't quite have the ability to do the full cutscenes of similar RTSs of the time. Certainly not the lame-ass FMV effects of Command and Conquer, all that. But they still managed to bring across a very deep story, in my opinion. In any case, I understand that some of you are just here for gameplay, so I'll put a time code in the description box to tell you where that begins. However, I will be reading the story. And in this case, I'll be focusing on Eden. Shiny Eden, prime colony of Earth, where the colonists first landed and established themselves. Now that Eden has grown big, well, sort of big. They were reduced a bit when Plymouth left, but you know, they're still biggest, the most technology, and with the kids of this current generation who are either the children or the grandchildren of the originals, people who landed on New Terra. Filled with the idea of a paradise that they had to leave behind, and how to recreate it here. Because that certainly is their birthright, is it not? To live in a world that is actually made for them. And of course the Plymouth may disagree, but those plant-hugging hippies don't know what's good for them. And certainly in time they will come to see it our way. Because that's certainly easier, is it not? We shall see. Alright, I'll be playing on normal difficulty because, well, the difficulty curve of this game is all over the place. Especially in the earlier missions, difficulty can be very steep. Because it will throw things at you that you're not prepared for. And keep in mind, I have played this game on hard in the past. And I finished it on hard. Both sides. So I thought, well, after all this time away, I could just jump back in. It's like riding a bicycle. I got crushed in the third mission. Actually, I got crushed in the second mission because I totally miscalculated how fast things were going. That shouldn't happen, but in any case, let us begin.
Among the remaining colonists of Eden, there is rumor, uneasiness, and fear. Their brothers and sisters in Plymouth seem lost. Eden leaders make brave promises, but behind the shuttered windows of the most advanced lab, secret projects progress. The rumors end when a breakthrough is announced. New Terra will be just like Earth, not in centuries, but in a single lifetime. Then, the dream becomes a nightmare. A mysterious, invisible killer has been unleashed. Escape is the only choice. Take what you need to survive. Flee and regroup. Remember, Commander, extinction is not an option.
Well, that was certainly very intense. Alright, let's begin with the story. Chapter 1. Conspiracy. Both wheels of the scooter left the ground as Axon sailed over the lip of the down ramp and into the tunnel that connected the hot lab with the rest of Eden Colony. He touched down on a third of the way along the ramp, the tires landing with a satisfying chirp that echoed off the metal-lined walls, motors whining in protest. He was breaking half a dozen safety regulations, driving like a teenager a third his biological age of 45. He didn't care. First of all, he was mad, damn it, and it felt good to break a few regs. And second of all, nobody was around to complain. The tunnels were almost deserted. Every adult who wasn't engaged in the service vital to the maintenance of the colony was in Nagoyan's town meeting. The meeting Axon Moon had just walked out on. We flew past a huge set of pressure doors, startling a workman who was inspecting the utility conduits that lined the wall like rows of fat sausages. He squealed the scooter around a right angle turn and up the tunnel towards his residence unit. He slowed slightly as he passed a group of children and their teacher bot strolling down a ramp from the nursery, then twisted the throttle hard over a scream up the last bit of tunnel. He hit the base of the ramp with a bump, started braking halfway up and slid to a stop just short of the open airlock doors. He nosed the scooter into the charging station next to a row of identical vehicles and plugged his keycard, which hacked safety overrides, from a slot in the handlebar. He palmed the card and glanced out through the train station's observation port. The sun was setting outside, exaggerating the hard, reddish tones of New Terra's landscape. The buildings of Eden spread out before him like a cluster of silver toadstools. In the distance, he could see the farthest of the lab structures, nicknamed the Hot Lab, where the meeting would still be going on. Nagoyan was a fool. He'd known that. He simply hadn't known how much of a fool until now. He rubbed the keycard between his fingers. The main lock into the Hot Lab was one door at Eden it wouldn't open. Axon Moon wasn't a man who liked anything close to him. He wasn't a man who was used to it. He strolled through the safety lock, its open doors ready to spring shut at any sign of an emergency. New Terra's thin atmosphere would kill a human in less than 2 minutes. It was something you were either eternally aware of or you were dead. common area with its lounging chairs, planetary islands, and multitainment consoles was deserted, as he'd hoped. He was about to break a law much more severe than the scooter speed limit, the one law that carried the death penalty, and he didn't want any potential witnesses around. He waved the key in front of a door to his private quarters and stepped quickly inside. "Good evening, Axon." The voice was cool, female, the slight accent that all Savant series computers shared. The computer itself, a glossy black cube in a little less than a meter on the side, was recessed into a console on the inside corner of the room. A window on the computer's otherwise featureless surface displayed a moving, transparent gearworks, like a clock made of glass. This was Kraft's identity icon, its face in a way as familiar to Axon as his own. It was as much a roommate as an appliance. The Savants were most sophisticated computers ever made, almost human in many ways, undoubtedly superior in others. "Good evening, Kraft. Verify security?" "We are secure." Code word, collusion. He nodded. The gesture doubtless detected by one of Savant's many eyes hidden around the room. He sat down on one of the room's 2 chairs. He had what were considered luxury quarters by Eden standards. But the room was only 2 meters by 3, and would have been smaller yet if he had been allowed a little extra space for Savant Kraft. Except for a few of the most advanced researchers in the labs, only a handful of surviving elders, such as himself, were allowed their own Savants. He and Kraft had been together since he'd emerged from cold sleep on the starship 10 years out from Nitera. He'd been just a child then, with only dim memories of Earth, open skies and plants that didn't grow in the hydroponics vat. He sometimes wished those memories meant more to him. Eden was home now, for better or worse. Earth was dead and nearly forgotten. He sighed. Kraft opened a stealth back channel to Savant Frost. "I need to talk with Emma." There, he'd done it. He initiated a clandestine communication with the rogue Plymouth colony, an act of treason that could get him kicked out of the nearest airlock. One moment, Emma is in her quarters. Frost confirms that she is secure. Opening voice. Open visual. Confirm. Kraft sounded incredulous. If that were possible for the computer, Savants weren't supposed to have emotions, but there were those who had their doubts. Suddenly Kraft had the justification. Visual communications would take 100 times the bandwidth of voice only, with a correspondingly increased chance that their link, bootlegged on the subcarrier of a satellite control signal, would be detected. Confirmed. I want a picture. One face of Savant's cube brightened into a display. Routing through the internal networks to the room's intercom screen would have been less secure. Emma's thin, high cheekbone face turned towards him. Her blonde hair, streaked with grey, was piled on top of her head and held in place with a couple of writing styluses poked into a bun. It had been years since he'd seen her face. Sometimes he still missed her. This was one of those times. She looked into the camera, her eyes wide with surprise. "Axon, are you crazy?" "You need to see my face, Emma, to know I'm serious. This is worth the risk." Her brow wrinkled with concern, and she sat down. Behind her he could see her quarters, if anything smaller than his own, and as always, a disorderly heap of clothing, rock samples, and scientific equipment. "What's wrong? You're not the joking kind, Axon." "It's Nagoyan. I told you he'd slammed the lid down on one of his labs 3 years ago. We'd assumed he was working on biotech for terraforming. He's resisted all my plea efforts, legitimate and clandestine, to get inside. His scientists are all handpicked, and not about to talk. And today he threw the lid open, held a town meeting to show off his secrets. He was working on terraforming, but that's only a small part of it. He's also been mining the encrypted data files from the starship, the ones on military technology." He heard an almost imperceptible gasp from Emma. The founders on Earth had been reluctant to throw away any science, But they'd also hoped that the new world could avoid some of Earth's worst mistakes. Thus, certain information had been encrypted, with the desire that it remain that way until the new civilization was ready for it. How bad is it? He has high-energy weapons, lasers of some kind, I think. He was hardly forthcoming with technical details, though he was all too happy to blast a hole through a piece of hull metal as demonstration. There may already be fixed installations on the new security posts, and he's working on adapting them to a turret on one of the mobile units. Maybe he has them operational already. I wouldn't put it past Nagoyan to feed us misinformation. She smiled slightly, as though you and I don't know a thing or two about misinformation. Where did we go wrong, Axon? He leaned his head down and rubbed his brow, unable to face her. This had been his idea initially. You saw the computer projections. All the elders did. 2 independent colonies had much greater probability of survival than one. We could have told the people not and have the colonies be truly independent. Creating a political rift seemed like the best way. She nodded. And now you see where it's brought us? He sighed and leaned back in his chair. You can see for yourself the different paths Eden and Plymouth have followed. The split might have happened anyway, given enough time. It's human nature to cluster into groups. It's human nature for groups to go to war too. We should have seen it coming. There isn't war yet, Emma. Plymouth doesn't even have weapons. They will, when they find out. They'll be forced into it. How will they find out? She frowned, and a bit of old fire flashed in her eyes. I'll tell them, Axon. If I have to. Of course, there are probably less direct ways. There always are. He didn't agree, but he couldn't argue. He'd do the same thing if he were in her place. Why else would he have contacted her? Besides, she continued, if they start terraforming without our consent, there'd have to be a reaction of some kind. It goes against the principles that Plymouth was founded on, of living in harmony with New Terra rather than trying to make it into some kind of ersatz Earth. He cleared his throat and squirmed in his seat. Emma, from what I saw this afternoon, I'm pretty sure they've already started. Some kind of atmosphere-building microorganism injected into the bedrock. Just test wells so far, but... What? What the frag do you people think you're doing? He sighed. They hardly consulted me, Emma. You know that I think any such drastic step has to be by consensus. Which is why little hard to do when the colonies aren't even talking to each other. You could feel old wounds opening. Feel them falling into the pit of their own differences as powerful as attraction that had once brought them together. It was your people who shut down the communication satellite. We don't have the technology to talk even if we wanted to. It was an accident, Axon. The Council just wanted to make a dramatic gesture. They had no idea the satellite couldn't be turned back on. Besides, there still are back channels through the wider satellite telemetry links. It's enough to open some dialogue between our leaders. It's too late for that. I've been trying to talk sense into Nagoyan for years, face to face. What chance does some voice out of a box have? Her look turned deadly serious. Then it might be time to take Nagoyan out of the picture, Axon. He felt the hairs stand up on the back of his neck. Emma had a ruthless side that he sometimes forgot. What are you suggesting? Doing what we've always done, Axon. What's necessary for the survival of the human race? He shook his head. No, I can't do that, Emma. We're the last of the elders, Axon. The last colonists born on old Earth. It's a dangerous world, even as protected as we are. We can't risk one of us dying with the program out of control. He was considering what she said, which is why he happened to be looking out the window as the fireball erupted. The sound came a fraction of a second later, mostly as a rumble in the floor, the air too thin to conduct much noise. Somehow, without realizing it, he was on his feet, standing in front of the window. Maker's name. What? Pleaded Emma's voice. I've lost visual. Axon? Malfunction, said Frost. Major malfunction. I have lost contact with all computers in Lab Structure 4. 20 seconds prior to this, a major cascade failure moved through all structures, electronic systems. Emma, the hot lab exploded. I can see flames. So there's a major oxygen leak. It looks like the whole pressure vessel must have ripped open. Frag! Half the town was in there! The silence suddenly struck him. The alarms! Croft, where are the alarms? All the automatic alarms attached to Lab 4 have been disabled, per German and Nagayan's orders. Sound disaster alarms! Dispatch disaster response teams! Use my override codes! Even as he was finishing the sentence, he could hear the klaxon sounding from every intercom speaker. Axon! Emma called. What's happening? I can't hear you! Single's breaking up! Axon ignored her, so he could listen to Kraft. Disaster teams will be unable to respond, said Kraft. Emergency tunnel bulkheads and airlocks were closed before the explosion. Open them! I do not have those override codes, and the doors have been locked. By whom? The doors are locked from inside. Axon, what? Emma's voice was cut off. We have lost the link to Plymouth. There is an incoming communication. Its origin is the Lab 4 East Safety Airlock. It was the same lock Axon had walked through only 10 minutes earlier. Perhaps someone had gotten inside and sealed it before the building had completely depressurized. On screen. The big intercom screen on the far wall came to life. He recognized Lil Komros, one of Nagoyan's scientists, but one of those most friendly to Axon's viewpoints. There were several times he thought she might agree to be a mole inside Nagoyan's operation, but it had never happened. He could tell before she spoke that she was terrified, and something else. She didn't look well. Elder, I don't have much time. I'm setting this message to record and repeat. Something went wrong with the test well. I told them the organisms we were using were too dangerous. Lil, are you? She continued, either unable to hear him or unwilling to stop talking. It grows too fast, but Nagoyan wasn't willing to wait. An atmosphere in our lifetime, he said. She shook her head as though to clear it. She brushed her hair out of her face, and you could see that she was trembling. Not enough time to explain. Attacks, organics, even protein units in Botronic computers, even the plastics in our environmental seals. In the background, he noticed for the first time a slight hissing noise. Evacuate now! Get everyone you can into the evac transports. Salvage what you can, but avoid the affected areas, and don't let anyone out. Get away, and don't come back, she coughed. Her face was white and waxy looking, red veins clearly standing out on her cheeks. Don't try to rescue us, or investigate. Get out, while you can. Only you have the influence to make this happen. Elder, you and Nagoyan is dead. We're all dead. Don't. Her eyes went wide. Her hands came up, as though to cover her face, then stopped, halfway, shaking. She fell back against the far wall of the airlock, her body shuddering convulsively. The camera lingered on her for almost a minute before there was a click and the message repeated. Axon cut off the picture with a gesture before he could hear her voice again. He leaned against a chair as to steady himself. He had to do what she said. There was no choice. She had seen what was happening to her before the message cut off. She was melting. And that's how the chicken crossed the road. Right, let's get into the mission briefing. Commander, something has gone terribly wrong. We must evacuate the colony immediately. All available evacuation transports have been filled to capacity and are ready to leave. Our survivability projections have identified the vehicles and supplies we need to build a viable new colony. Gather these materials and rendezvous at the mining beacon, southeast of our colony. An exact list of needed materials is available in the specific objectives. Hurry, Commander. Time is running out. Alright, so we just need to get a whole lot of stuff to certain points. That's fine. We can do that. So let us begin.
Command control initiated.
Alright. Now this game was originally designed for a much lower resolution. So I'm playing it on a little bit larger resolution, but it shouldn't be fine.
Food production in surplus.
And let's get everyone that isn't necessary for the evacuation, or that is already done with the evacuation preparations.
Warning. Power
Let's
shortage.
see, there's Tokamak and a command center in those convex. They can go. Right, and these two transports are filled with food. As you can see, this lab is infected, so we need to go. And the buildings around it are starting to die. Alright, those are all empty. Start loading up all the basic stuff that we need. Alright, go.
Structures disabled.
We don't have time, because whatever it is spreading. And the fact that we can't see it is even more terrifying. Right, you go. There's an acrydome in there, you can go. Right. Just the structure factory, and then we are loaded up and ready to go.
Structures disabled.
Nope, no. The selection can be a bit finicky. Alright, we are losing buildings fast. We need to go. Alright, and that's the first mission done. Pretty much. Not much that can be done. Yep.
Food production in surplus. Structures disabled.
And as soon as the...
Warning. Power
Yeah, that's pretty much to be expected. Jeez, it's spreading fast.
Morale is terrible.
I can imagine.
You have done well. Our colony is surviving.
Alright then. And that's the first mission. Short and sweet. But it sets what is going in motion. And now, the hard part begins. Thank you for watching. See you next time.